All right, I think the flow of new attendees is kind of slowed. I think everyone's joined that's going to join here. So let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for dialing in today to the webinar. We'll try to make this pretty short and sweet for you, try to pack as much information as we can, as little time as possible, of course. So let's get going. First off, just a little bit about me. My name is Darren Siegel. I'm a product specialist here at Specops Software. Been in the IT industry over 12 years now, working a variety of different roles around IT infrastructure, security, Active Directory, there's a number of different environments. So, I found myself here at Specops. This is my latest role, and like we do here, hopefully you guys will as well. What about the company? Some of you guys are familiar with us, some maybe not. Specops has been in business about 17 years now. First started out introducing products for desktop management, and then moved into our current focus, which is password and identity access management. And we have a very simple goal here. It's right there. So we make it easy. We try to make products that take complicated problems and solve them in a simple, elegant, easy-to-use way. So here's what we're talking about today. Just to start off with a little bit of background, we call it a password reality, just what password use means in the industry, in the IT technology field in general. Kind of talk about what makes for a good password policy, what makes for a strong password that's going to make for a secure environment and make sure that access to your data is secure as possible. And then we're going to do a little bit of demo of a new tool that we launched just a couple months here at Specops called Specops Password Auditor. That tool is going to provide, we hope, some unique insights into your environment, both around your password policies and maybe some other housekeeping or security items in your environment. And then we will have time at the end for questions. Mentioned earlier, there is a Q&A tool built into the WebEx, so please post any and all questions there, and we will answer them as best we can. So first off, just what is the reality of passwords in the environment, in technology in general? There are, of course, more secure authentication methods coming out, things like two-factor authentication, fingerprint authentication, things like that. But the fact of the matter remains, passwords are still ubiquitous. Something users have been familiar with since computers first appeared and gained popularity, and they're easy to understand. So users are going to be using passwords everywhere. But of course, the drawback is those are vulnerable to all sorts of attacks. If passwords are easy to guess, or if someone's going after a brute force attack, there are ways those passwords are compromised all the time. And of course, making the problem even worse, there's a problem with password sprawl. Users log into dozens, if not hundreds, of different systems that all require passwords, and they end up reusing those passwords across multiple systems. So if someone gains a password into one thing, so the attacker has the same password and can get into any number of other sites and services. And what this leads to is what we find in the industry. Breaches happen all the time. There's the big breaches that hit the news, lots of smaller breaches that you've never heard about. But as industry experts track how these breaches occur, what's going on, 91% of the time, more than 9 times out of 10, that breach was caused by either a weak password or sometimes even a default password, something where the factory default was set and was never changed. So, think about 9 out of 10 attacks you can block just by having a stronger password policy and making sure that those passwords are as secure as they possibly can be. There's various recommendations out there how to do that. PCI compliance has a recommendation. NIST, Microsoft, all these organizations have come up with recommendations. But even each one of these alone still may not put you in an ideal situation for password security. So you really have to do, as you're running your environment, as you're thinking about your corporate Active Directory network, think about what you can do to make a strong password for your corporate network. So the first thing, which is kind of laid out here, just length and complexity, just more characters, more possible character sets, is going to make for a password that's much harder to guess. So one of my esteemed colleagues here, Liz, came up with a great 16-character long password with a bunch of arbitrary words. It's a great password. It's long. You run this through kind of, think if you estimate how long it would take to crack this based on brute force, 35,000 years just by having 16 lowercase characters. But then let's add complexity into the mix. Take that same password, add some uppercase, add some special characters, add some numbers. All of a sudden, you've increased the character sets dramatically, and you end up increasing the strength of that to the point where the theoretical time it would take to guess that password skyrockets, several orders of magnitude. And this is where complexity is really important, in making your password strong. And so what we're going to do here, I'm going to show you in a minute in the Specops Password Auditor tool. What we do is we've come up with some ways to measure how strong your policies are. We came up with an algorithm that compares your length and complexity requirements against a standard we chose of 16 characters and 4 out of 4 character sets, those character sets being, of course, uppercase, lowercase, digits, and special characters. We also look at other things you can do for managing your password strength. Dictionary use. This is a big one. We're seeing more and more interest in using password dictionaries. So that's either blocking common passwords, known passwords, PASSW0, RD1, things like that are, yes, technically they're strong, but they're common. They're easy to guess. They also, we also want to protect against using common words in passwords, using your company name in the password, using your name in the password. I work out of Specops office in Philadelphia. I see, we've got the Eagles here. We see Eagles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as a password. It's easy to guess. You want to block that. That's going to make it that much harder for someone coming in to try to guess your password. We're also going to talk about password history and password aging, which is another way of saying basically managing the life cycle of your password. Are your passwords being changed frequently enough so that a password isn't sitting out there for too long, or just by its sheer age it becomes easier to find? And when that password's being changed, are you ensuring that it's being changed to something unique, making sure it's changed to something that wasn't just used 2 or 3 password changes ago? Now what we're going to do, just a quick overview before we jump into it, we're going to show you our new tool that we're very proud of here at Specops. We call it Specops Password Auditor. It is a free tool. It's available for download on our website. We're going to send out, at the end of this presentation, we're going to send out a bunch of information, including, of course, the link to where you can find that tool. And what it does is it's going to look at your user accounts. It's going to look at your password policies in Active Directory, and it's going to try to identify what we hope will be some unique insights into what your user accounts look like, what your password policies look like, how they stack up against some of those industry regulations or recommendations that are out there. And one thing I do want to emphasize about this tool, we are not sending the information anywhere but to your screen where you run the tool. It's going to scan your Active Directory. It's going to present some reports. Yes, you can export them to CSV if you choose to, but if you don't do that, the information being shown in the tool never leaves your computer screen. It's not stored anywhere else. So with that, I'm going to bring up my my demo environment here and show you this is the tool. So when you bring it up, of course, it's going to check what domain it is. You can run it against a specific domain controller so you can know exactly where it's running all of those queries. As far as access rights needed to run the tool, it's looking at attributes on user accounts, such as password, last set, user account control, last logon timestamp attributes. These attributes and all of your password policies, our default domain policy, by default, you can run this as any authenticated user and you'll have access to read these policies. That's just the default for how Microsoft Active Directory is structured. If you have taken steps to lock down your AD further, or if you do have any fine-grained password policies in your environment, you will need to run the tool as a user with administrative access sufficient to read that information in Active Directory. So we've got an account, we're set up. I just hit scan. This is, and then we get some nice progress bars, and within just a few seconds here, we're ready to show you what we found in your environment. So let's take a look at the results here. Boxes across the top, I'm going to get to those in a minute. What we want to focus on first is this 3 down at the bottom, which are the password policies in your environment. I've got a few different policies in this demo environment just to show you what those are going to look like. Most folks in here are probably just going to have your default domain policy, which is going to look like this. If you've got any fine-grained password policies, we're going to show them in here as well. And then, of course, I think we've got some Specops password policy customers on the line. So if you do have Specops password policies configured in your environment, we will query those and show them in the results here as well. So what we're already seeing here is that relative strength meter we talked about. So the default domain policy here, I've got the Microsoft defaults, which is a length requirement of 7, and Microsoft's complexity requirement, which is 3 out of those 4 character sets, upper, lower digit, and special. So that relative strength you can see is actually pretty low compared to these other ones. This fine-grained password policy I created, which has still the 3 out of 4 character requirement, but I've got a much longer minimum length, so I've got a higher password relative strength. And then if you've got Specops password policy, you can actually require all 4 character sets. So that plus a length requirement is going to have a relative strength that's a little bit stronger still. So if we go back here, we've provided a little insight as to kind of the scope of each of your policies. So we can see, roughly 82% of the environments using the default domain policy. I've got some admin accounts. I actually don't have that Specops policy activated in this environment, but that would be in the pie chart here as well. And then the final piece, which I think is really the most interesting piece, provides the most insight, is this password policy compliance views. So we're showing you, again, all of the policies in your environment, and we're comparing them against the requirements that are in some of these industry standard either requirements or recommendations. And you can click through, you can see you're meeting all the requirements, some or none. And you can actually click on each one of these and see exactly what those requirements are. So, for example, this Microsoft recommendation has a length and a dictionary requirement. So we haven't met either of those. Red and red. My fine-grained password policy, of course, a little bit better. We've got a higher minimum length. Still can't do dictionary, though. For dictionary, you would need, to meet that, of course, you're getting a third-party tool, something such as Specops password policy to meet those requirements. And you can kind of click through each of these and just see what these are. NIST has a little bit different, length and dictionary. SANS, which is an interesting one because they actually provide different requirements for admin accounts versus end users. So you can see for users, they've got they've got these requirements. If for admins, they've got a little bit different requirements still, maximum age requirements, things like that. And so you can see through here, are you meeting these length requirements, these aging requirements? Do you have something in your environment to block against dictionary-based attacks? And are you enforcing all 4 character sets? Again, just to get that relative strength as high as possible, make it as hard to guess as possible. Orders of magnitude more difficult to crack just based on having those complexity requirements. So that's pretty much it for the password piece. And of course, we also have all those other boxes across the top. We want to provide a number of different insights beyond just what the password policies are. So we look at some things that are pretty, that we can scan just to highlight maybe some other potential password-based issues that you might see in your environment. Do you have admin accounts that just haven't been logged on to recently? It's just sitting out there still. Do you have maybe more admin accounts than you even realized? We can look at when passwords are expiring. Do you have a long list of password? A long number of password expirations coming up soon? Do you have accounts out there that passwords have expired and have sat with an expired password for too long? And even there is actually something that we find is a very interesting insight. There is actually a hidden flag in Microsoft. If you're not familiar, you can actually set an account to not require a password at all. So we're going to check for those in your environment as well. Of course, if an account doesn't require any password, that's kind of a worst-case scenario in terms of security. So we want to make sure if those accounts exist, they exist with good reason and don't have admin access. So we're going to jump back into the tool here, and I can show you what these insights look like. So we've taken all of the admin accounts, domain admins, enterprise admins, and we're going to list out for here who those people are. So if you come in here, you might find by surprise some service account that has domain admin or some user account that shouldn't be an admin account that's in here. You're going to see that right here. I've got in this environment, intentionally for demo purposes, left an account. It's got admin access, hasn't been touched in over a year. That's something we want to highlight for you. That's something that you're going to want to clean up, is that, if an admin account's sitting there not being used, that means no one's paying attention to it. That means it could be picked up and used at some other time, so you probably want to clean that up. Like I said, that password not required flag, is that set on any user accounts? Do those users have admin access? Do you know who those users are and why they're set to password not required? We want to make sure we present to you where those are. This is actually something that's, this password not required flag. This is actually something that's not even exposed in the graphical interface in Active Directory. So we want to present it here so you don't have to go out running crazy PowerShell queries to try to find those accounts. We'll present them for you as part of this tool. We talked about expiring passwords, of course. You might be interested if your password changes are kind of coming in waves. If people are, changing their passwords and you want to know when the password expirations are coming up, we can show you that. We've even got a slider here so you can, go out to 30 days, see whose passwords are going to change. We see a lot of organizations where for one reason or another, they come in waves, like, maybe it's a 6-month cycle, and for some reason, every 6 months, every user has to change their password. So you can see that, and you can see that that's coming through this tool. And of course, like I talked about, anyone who's got a password that's expired, maybe some of these aren't too much of a concern. We had a default domain password policy with a maximum age of 90. So 92, 93 days for password since the password was last changed. Maybe I'm not too worried about that. It's good to see it here. That could be someone who's on vacation or just hasn't logged in for a couple of days, maybe over a long weekend. But I see an account that hasn't had password changed in 118 days. That's a long time if I've got a 90-day password age requirement. So we want to show you that here. Find out why that password hasn't changed. Is that account still in use? What's going on there? Do you want to disable that account either temporarily or permanently? So I want to show you all that in this tool here. So I hope that that offers a pretty good overview of what you can do with this free tool. Like I said, we're very proud of it here. We hope if you do choose to install and run it in your environment, we hope you do choose to install it, and if you do, we hope it provides some unique insights into your environment. Just to recap, think about these password policy rules. Think about your relative strength, your compliance. Think about if your password policies. Now, if you're confident that you're requiring passwords that are strong enough that they're not going to be easily guessed, think about your admin accounts. Think about who has admin access. A user account getting compromised is one thing. An admin account getting compromised is a whole other thing. So make sure you know who your admin accounts are. Make sure your admin accounts are in use actively and aren't sitting out there with expired passwords. And of course, for all of your users, know what your password policy lifecycle looks like, understand what's going on in your environment, and use that information to, of course, help your users and help yourselves, in the IT security field, lock down your environment. All right, so that's it we have here. Questions, let's see. All right, we've got a question here from Ben. Is here. Both 80 base level and expanded password policy. Yeah, the password not required field. We're looking at a couple different things there. We're looking at either the that flag and AD. We're also checking the pass. We're also comparing against password length. There are certain scenarios we could do something where just whatever it is where there's no password required. Through all of the policies, we're checking everywhere where you could possibly set up that kind of scenario and reporting it for you there. right. Let's see, what else? What else do we have here? All right, questions from Ron about where to install the tool. Install it anywhere. That demo we just showed there, that was just my my Windows 10 workstation in that domain. So, in general, here at Specops, we always like to say don't install anything out of the domain controller if you don't have to. So, I would definitely recommend running it from another location. And then we saw in the beginning, you can pick which domain controller you want to query, and it'll run all of those queries over the LAN. Question on the download link. We will be sending that out at the end of the after the webinar here. To a number of things. You'll send a recording of this so you can go back and watch it again, and we will include a link to where you can download that tool. Great to see that there's interest in downloading it. Oh, and then looks like I'm not sure if that's a public link. I've got my colleague Colleen here answering questions for us too. I think. There's the link. All right, perfect. All right. I think that's it. I'm just going to kind of give it a minute for anyone who has any questions. Feel free to type them in. But if not, I'm just going to wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Like I said, we're going to send all the information out after. If you've got any questions, if you've got any interest in Specops software and interest in our company, please reach out, Specops Marketing, and we'll of course get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you, everybody.